Hey YouTube family, it is Kevin here, Candy Banana Balls. How are we doing today? Just a quick update on our ASFs. Basically, question I see posed a lot, try to answer the best I can for you, is how many colonies of ASF rats, or how many ASF rats do I need to support the amount of snakes I have as far as feeding them? And that's a little bit of a tricky answer, and I'll tell you why. With the ASFs, what you run into, they have very decent sized litters for the most part, but you're going to vary. You're going to see some of your ASFs will drop, 15, 17, even up to 20 babies at one time. But in the same respect, or in the same colony, you may have females that drop 6 or 8 or 10. So you can't really base it until you get to know your colony and what they typically are having baby-wise. You can't really base, on a number, a solid number. So let's just say, we'll use my collection for example. I have 10 adults currently, and right now we have 5 hatchlings that we are getting fed to be sold. So they won't be around for a real long time, but they are around right now to be, fed currently until they are sold. So let's just say we're going to feed 10 snakes. That's a great number to use, because you can take that, if you have 20 or 30 snakes, you can take the number and obviously multiply it by then, give you kind of a base idea. So what I did, or where I started, was I started with 2 separate colonies. One was a 1-4 colony and one was a 1-5 colony. The basic thing you're going to be most frustrated with, depending on when you buy your ASFs, are the time it takes them to start breeding, and then once that happens, the time it takes those babies to grow to be what I want to consider usable size for your adult ball pythons. Those are the 2 things that you're going to struggle with right away, and that's across the board. So if you get ASF rats that are subadults, that are say 6 to 8 weeks old, and you're going to put them in a colony and start from there, you're probably not going to see breeding from that colony till close to 3 months is when you're going to first start to see signs of breeding, or within that 3-month to 4-month range, going to see your first set of babies. That seems like a while, especially when you're impatiently waiting for this to happen. So that's one thing you want to remember. Second thing is, once those babies are on the ground or in the enclosure, it's going to take about 15 or 16 days to be weaned, basically to where their eyes are open and they start eating solid food. At that time, they are typically still pretty small. I mean, these videos I'm showing you right now, these guys are between 6-7 weeks old for the most part that you're seeing. So that gives you an idea. That is pretty much the size of a small to medium sized mouse. That's what you're working with, close to 2 months down the road from you having these babies. So back that up a minute. It took you, that long, close to 4 months till you had babies in your enclosure, and now another 2 months and you are at that size. So any adult ball python would easily eat 3 to 4 of those for one meal. That's just a small meal. They're not going to be very satisfied with that. You know what I mean? If you give them one of those, they're going to still be hungry. Now, nutrient-wise, and again, there's nothing that I can find to base this on factual basis, but everybody says that the ASF rat, the nutrients it carries, are equivalent or are very much comparable size-wise. A much smaller rodent in the ASF, you get the same vitamins, minerals, and growth out of the smaller ASF that you would a full-size small rat. I personally attribute that to what you have to feed the ASFs to get them to breed properly. To get these ASFs to breed consistently and properly, you have to feed them a much higher protein diet and lower fat diet than you do your regular rats. So, in my mind, that turns around to say a couple things. If the regular rat is being fed lower protein and not, I guess, as quality of a diet, but these guys are being fed a super high quality diet, it only makes sense that that has something to do with why you're seeing the reaction growth wise and color wise out of the smaller rodent being fed to your ball python. That tells me that because their diet is so much better, that's being passed on to your ball python, and you're seeing the results because of it. So why not do that if you have the option to your regular rats? And I do. I have my own colony of regular rats, and they get fed the same diet as my ASFs, and I'm telling you, it does make a difference. You will see color, growth, just overall health of your snakes when you change to ASFs or rodents with a much higher quality diet. You will see a difference in your snakes. It is a visible difference, and it is well worth the few extra dollars it takes to feed these animals properly. So if you don't breed your own rodents and you have a decent enough relationship with the person that does breed your rodents, speak to them about breeding some rodents and some animals with higher quality diet, for you specifically, and don't be afraid to offer that person a little bit more money for those rodents, because in the long run you are going to benefit from what they are feeding those animals. So, not to get too far off topic, that colonies that I set up were nowhere near enough to feed what I have. So what I ended up doing with those colonies is I increased right away both of those. I let some females grow up and made both of those 1/6 colonies. So 1 male, 6 females. And then obviously I started having breeding. I was breeding already, but I had to wait for those couple females to grow up, which took another close to 3 to 4 months before they started producing. So you can see this time frame passing you by, and the frustration that you could get. You have these rodents, you're trying to build these colonies, and you're still at the pet store, or you're still buying frozen thawed rodents every week, basically to feed your collection, because the only thing you really have to offer them are very small subadult ASFs. So that's the couple, I guess the catch-22, or what do you do to fix that? And there's a couple ideas. One, you could get your ASF colonies established enough. Don't bother them. Don't really feed them off. Build yourself a nice collection of subadults to where you are basically starting ahead of the game. What I mean by that is, if you have a collection of 10 snakes, if you have a couple tubs of 3-month-old to 4-month-old ASFs, let's just say you have 25 of each, males and females. So you got a nice stockpile. At that point, you could start to rely on your collection, your ASF production by itself. But is that going to be enough? Are you going to find yourself going through those adults, and pretty soon now you're tapping into subadults, and now you're tapping into 6 and 8 week old ASFs? That's the dilemma. So you need to figure out for your usage, what your colonies produce. For me, to feed 10, what I ended up doing total is running 3 colonies, and I made those colonies each 1/8 colonies. Now I have everything I need to do what I need. So I, obviously can feed hatchlings from babies. I have, sub-adults and adults for all the different size ball pythons that I'm using. And I have extras. So what you can always do with overflow is have them frozen, and put them away for future use. So it's really, with the ASFs, that's what's nice. Their adult size is always good for an adult ball python. So as long as you have space to keep them, you can keep them alive for months and months and months and never have an issue size-wise. Basically, the only issue becomes room. Do you have the room to do such? So what I recommend, because of the slow growing of this, you start out basically the way that you think you need to support your snakes. So if you're going to be feeding 10 snakes, definitely don't start with anything less than 216 colonies, and I'd honestly recommend 3, just because you can always back down. You can always go by, take one of your colonies and close it down if you have too many. But what you can't do is produce enough quickly enough if you don't have them. So that would be my recommendation. If you're doing 10 snakes, the minimum I think it's going to take you to actively and effectively feed 10 snakes is 216 colonies, but I think you're going to be happier with 3. At that point, now you have opportunity to have everything you need, and obviously if you have overflow, you can sell them, or you can freeze them for a later date. The only other option is if you want to add to those 1/6s and make them 1/8s or 1/9s. Try to not build that last colony, just add a couple more females. That's an option too. 2 1/6s properly ran, and as long as you have decent producers in those 1/6s, you should have no issues taking care of 10 to 15 ball pythons. But I'd rather be ahead of the game or safe than sorry. So I would recommend either 2 big colonies or 3 at least 1/6 colonies to do so. So the 2 things you need to remember with ASFs are slow to start, but once they start, they're great. They keep producing babies. It's a baby factory once they start. And 2, it's not really they grow slow. In comparison to a regular fancy rat, the growth is probably close, but because they're such a small animal to begin with, you just don't notice it like you do a fancy rat. A fancy rat comes out, and by the time it's pups and weaned, I mean, it's already probably past the size of an adult ASF, at the pup stage. So, within 15 days, you're seeing something that is as big or bigger than something you've had to wait potentially 3 months to get. So that's where, it comes to seem that you are taking too long to do this, but in reality, you're not. So get yourself ahead of the curve, and you'll always be good. Obviously, if you ever have too many, you can always sell them or have them frozen thawed for a later date. So that's my recommendation. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And you guys, please like and subscribe. Let's go on this journey together. I'll do anything I can to help you guys answer questions. Anything I can do, I will do to help you. And this community, this reptile community, from the parts that I've been involved in, is something else. People take time out, professional guys, people that, are big names, take time out of their day to help little guys like me and you. So it's kind of neat, and it's really cool to be a part of. So thanks again. Like, subscribe. Have a great day.